We breaking bread, yeah. We breaking bread, yeah. We breaking bread, yeah. One conversation at a time. We breaking bread, yeah. We breaking bread, yeah. We breaking bread, yeah. One conversation at a time.
The Breaking Bread Village.
One conversation at a time.
The Breaking Bread Village.
One conversation at a time.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Breaking Bread Village, where we just kind of have transparent and real conversations. Today, we are back with our Defund the Police conversation. And I say defund because that's the words that people have been using for this. And yes, some funds will be reallocated, but we also want to talk about reform because that's also a part of it. So I just want to go ahead and get to it and welcome our guests on to the show. And I'm really excited to have everybody back and additional guests as well, so we can have this conversation from all perspectives, because that's so important for us to understand what we're dealing with when we can kind of see things from different vantage points. So I'm going to add, hey, Ben, how are you?
Hey, good. Thanks. And yourself?
I am well. Thank you. Hey, Rick.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you so much for being on.
Glad to be back.
Thank you. Hey, Steph, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am great. Thank you. Let's add. Can you hear me, Derrick?
Hi, young lady. How are you? I can hear you.
Awesome. I am well. How are you doing?
Great.
Good. Yeah, so I just want everybody to do a quick introduction of themselves. Ben, I'm going to let you go first, and then Steph, and then Rick, and then Derrick, if you want to kind of introduce yourself and kind of tell what you do. Okay?
So, although I'm going to put a disclaimer out there real quick again, I'm not representing any employer, current or former. I'm not representing the NASW, but I am a social worker. I'm a qualified mental health professional. I'm also a qualified intellectual disabilities professional, and just want to speak to this topic from a social work perspective, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on it again.
Thank you. Steph?
Hey, I'm Steph, pronouns she, her, they, them. I am super excited to have this conversation again and take it a little bit further. I'm a peer support specialist. So what that means is I'm qualified based on my training and my certification to assist others with therapeutic services in the mental health system, because I myself am a recipient of mental health services and have been pretty much my whole life. So I use my story of recovery and resiliency to help inspire the same in others.
Awesome. Thank you. Rick?
Yeah, my name's Rick. I'm a retired Flint police officer. I served the city of Flint for 23 years, and I'm a current defense attorney in the city of Flint. I'm glad to be back.
Thank you. And Derrick, you weren't on last time, so I would love for you to, tell a little bit more about yourself.
Hi, my name is Derrick Gibson. I run for New York State Governor. I have a degree in criminal justice, a chance to work with political law enforcement, investigate police misconduct, and so forth. I also was an automotive mechanic at one point in my life. I retired from that. I have a degree in automotive technology, and I'm just a regular individual trying to keep the traditional American values in place for America.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much again for taking the time to have this conversation again, because we had so many questions afterwards and people were kind of curious as to your stands and your viewpoints on these different questions. So the first question that was very popular, and Rick, if you might want to answer this, was what qualifies someone to be an officer? And I know I kind of asked the question in regards to the testing as far as the exam, the psychic exam before they become an officer, but and maybe this is like a very broad question, but what qualifies someone to be an officer? Like how are they able to say this person is equipped? And I think I know you answered a little bit last time, but people I guess didn't feel like it was answered clear enough. So maybe you can expand a little bit.
I'll give it a whirl. Like I indicated last time, it's every department has different qualifications for application. So some departments require associate's degree. Some departments require a bachelor's degree. Some require nothing but a high school diploma. It all depends on where you apply. Once you apply, there's a screening process, obviously, and then candidates are selected to attend the police academy. Now, I'll give out a caveat. There are candidates who can put themselves through the police academy without being hired by a police department, and then go try to get hired somewhere else once they're certified. So, but that I believe requires at least an associate's degree in Michigan, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
In order after that, then they have to go through the police academy. In the state of Michigan, I believe it's 16 weeks. Police academy, 40 hours a week. And one of the things I pointed out last time that I think is kind of interesting is that there is no national standard for police training. So there's no national level of training required. It's up to the states. So each state, the qualification is a little bit different. But in Michigan, you have to attend the police academy. When you're finished, you take a state test. You have to pass the state test in order to become a police officer. And it's all governed by the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. And that's the entity that oversees all the police training and the certification process and who gets certified and who doesn't. They also are the ones that can remove you from law enforcement if you violate the rules.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Derrick, I want to ask you a question since you weren't on last time. I kind of want to get your stance on defund the police, because I mean, we know everyone else is. So I would like for you to kind of tell us your view on defunding the police.
I would love to. Well, my thoughts on defunding the police is, to me, that the word within itself, defunding the police, makes absolutely no sense. We have a society that is governed by the citizens of a particular society. And this is what this society wants, is police to govern the people. We govern ourselves, so we elected police officers to govern us. Without so many, let me rephrase that, without funding for the police, a lot of things that is going on that the police do as of now would be cut back on, such as maybe, I would say, for instance, if you having a fight with your better half, and if you want to call a social worker out, it's not going to do any good. I can tell you that from experience. It's not going to do any good. So you see what happened when the police come out in a volatile situation like that, and a lot of times police get hurt. So defunding the police makes absolutely no sense. We need to increase funding for the police, and we need to change the way we are training our police. But the defunding part makes absolutely no sense. I could never get that through my head. And as a black man, it's going to affect my community worse than it will anyone else's community, because the crime we have in our communities already, we have 13% of the population, but we have 50% of the crime. Without police, that will double to 100% of the crime. So it absolutely makes no sense when I hear people say that.
Okay, so it sounds like you agree with reforming, but not defunding. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I agree with reforming the police in some aspects. I had run in with law myself, per se, and when I was younger, and it definitely could have been handled a different way. The police had some kind of, I don't know what it is about certain police officers, once they're sworn in, they have that power. They tend to abuse the power that they have, and that's what inflames people and push hate towards the law enforcement community.
Okay. Does anybody have anything to say to that? Thank you, Derrick.
I have some follow up for that, sure. Personally, I just feel as if a lot of people are hung up on the verbiage of defund the police, right? Whether, however you want to phrase it, what it's talking about is a reallocation of funds to something more proactive than reactive. So what I mean by that is social workers are trying to prevent people from getting involved in the criminal justice system, right? That would be our goal in many cases, at least. when police are involved, typically it's too late. I don't think that many people, at least for myself, I don't think that we should eliminate the police force altogether. I certainly don't think that police should stop addressing violent crime. There's a pretty great source out there that is called, oh shucks, I'm gonna mess it up. Campaign Zero, sorry. If you see me looking to the side, guys, I'm not being rude. I'm looking at my notes. So Campaign Zero addresses a lot of the things that I talked about last week, where we're stopping broken window crimes from being pursued. So things like spitting on the sidewalk, for example, things like traffic citations. Do we really need police officers pulling people over these days when there are traffic cameras that work perfectly well? Probably not. And when there are statistics to say that Black men in particular are being killed at disproportionate rates than their white counterparts, then I think that taking the opportunity for something like that to happen away is important. So if we mitigate how much police interact with people to begin with when it's not a violent crime, that's one way to address the problem, and it ties into police reform. So I think a lot of the times we're on the same page, but again, people get hung up on that verbiage.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, if I may, I'll address that briefly because I sort of touched on this last time we spoke. I don't have a problem with increasing funding for social workers to help out in the community. What I have a problem with is taking that money from the police department to accomplish that goal, because many police departments are already underfunded. As I said last time, the City of Flint Police Department, the entire time I was there, was defunded every single year. When I hired on, there was 300 police officers. When I left, there was around 100, and it's my understanding now they're below 90. And funny, after our last conversation, there was actually an article in the MLive here in Michigan that talked to the Flint police chief and the mayor of the city of Flint. And they addressed defunding the police department. And the police chief said that we'll lose, we don't have enough people already. And I talked to you last time about Flint being already understaffed. And the chief said specifically that he has 19 open positions, and he's been trying to fill 16 of them for over 6 months. And to just give you an idea about police staffing levels, in New York, the staffing level is approximately 1 officer for every 200 citizens. Chicago is 1 officer for every 236. Detroit's 1 for every 303. And in Flint, it's 1 officer for every 919 people. So that just gives you an idea of the magnitude of taking funding away from a department like Flint, Saginaw, Detroit. These departments are already understaffed and overworked, and you're talking about taking monies away that are going to take officers off the streets, which is exactly what Derrick was talking about. These neighborhoods are already involved with violent crime and all kinds of danger for the citizens, and you're going to take officers out of those neighborhoods if you defund the police department. I have no problem with some of these programs we've discussed and putting social workers out there and letting them respond to some of this stuff, but if you start taking monies away from these departments, then you're absolutely taking officers off the streets, and I don't think that is the proper approach.
Okay. Steph, I know you were had your hand up.
Yeah. So based on the conversation we had last time, I had a lot of people in my life asking me questions about, like, what if the monies are taken away from the police department and those few positions, for example, in Flint, are eliminated, even though they're shortened. So if there is a limited number of police officers down there anyway, and they're having an issue even filling those positions, what's the harm in throwing in some social workers into the opportunity of being able to help people directly in the field? And I know that Ben can attest to it, working in social work himself. Like, social workers already are doing the work for like a lot of the community support of people, and there's no reason that they wouldn't be able to pull that over into the police department so that people are being taken care of, especially on a consistent basis. Because sometimes when you call the police, it's a different officer every time. I know where I live here in Bay City, anybody that calls an officer, it's always the fresh boys. Like you never see the same police over and over. Whereas like with a social worker, they're kind of tasked with taking care of a specific group of people in the mental health system. It's their caseload. So that would be something that would be able to improve those relationships and also offer the support to the community that they need.
Okay, so but with this though, and correct me if I'm wrong, with this, will the same social worker be going out to the same, communities? Like how would that work? And I understand with social workers, with their regular caseload, they do have the same people they build a rapport with. But with this, from what I've read, now again, correct me if I'm wrong, you would just kind of be sent wherever there's a need. And that's the question that I have, is how is the rapport built? And I know that you have crisis workers that go out right on the scene. I get that. So how does that look? And then also I had a question to the point of who decides what's violent and what's nonviolent? Who decides what's a social work call and what's a officer call? That's my question as well. Who decides that?
So I could speak to a little bit of that if that's okay.
Yeah, you speak to it, and then Derrick had his hand up, and he could speak after that.
Oh, okay. What I was going to say is, as far as rapport building goes, the nature of crisis work is that you don't really get an opportunity to build a rapport like you would with somebody that you work with on a regular basis. That's just the way it is.
Right.
However, with us, we have what we do as a profession is basically we are tasked with protecting and advocating for people that are traditionally marginalized. So we're basically supposed to be the champion of underdogs if you're doing social work right. So I think that taking all that into account and taking into account that we learn things like the soft skills, like empathy, interviewing skills, things like that, I think that any social worker could fill a crisis role and excel. Granted, it's not for everybody, and I think that the pool of applicants would reflect people that genuinely want to do that sort of work. But again, violent crime, I don't think that there's something out there, at least to my knowledge, where somebody's saying social workers should fill those boots. That shouldn't happen, in my view. As it is, on an average, police work has 4% of their work allocated to violent crime, on average. Now, is that different community to community? Sure. So I think that reforming the criminal justice system, so again, we're not pursuing things like Campaign Zero mentioned, things like, consumption of alcohol on streets, marijuana possession, disorderly conduct, trespassing, loitering, disturbing the peace, spitting, jaywalking, bicycling on the sidewalk, prostitution, things like that. Do we really need police to address those issues? The answer is, to me, is probably not.
So are you saying that, I just want to ask you this real quick. Are you saying that social workers would go out by themselves to those type of situations, or do you believe they should still be accompanied by a police officer?
I don't think that those situations should be addressed at all, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So it would be basically looking at police work being violent crime and social workers working on the things that we already do effectively, and taking that role away from police officers that are already burdened and tasked with things like homelessness and substance use disorder, right? In recent years, substance use disorder has been acknowledged by, I would say, the general public as being a mental health issue. It wasn't.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just want to ask this real quick because I know people have had this question. when you say it should not be addressed, does that mean, I mean, basically that sounds like changing the laws where things should become legal again, or should become legal, or is that the stuff that the social worker is supposed to be tasked with? Are those the issues? Because obviously there's a reason why those people are, doing the certain things that they are. I'm going to let you just kind of answer that real quick, and then I'll let Derrick say his point.
Sure. I think social workers could be tasked with those sorts of things. Absolutely. And I was just going to add that the reason why society has shifted its thinking to acknowledging that substance use disorder is a mental health issue and not a criminal one is
Right.
because if you look back in the 70s during the black heroin epidemic and the 80s with the crack epidemic, it was looked at as an arrest our way out of this problem. In recent years, with the opiate issue the way it is, there's a lot of white children that are dying from this opioid crisis. And really, it's a place of privilege that shifted the policy the way it has recently. And now we see the emergence of things like drug courts that are wildly successful in many communities. I wish it would have happened sooner, but here we are.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Derrick?
I want to go back to the young man with this. I heard him say once I finished speaking that some people are blind and not familiar with the birds. I'm very familiar with the birds.
Derrick, we're having a little bit of a time hearing you. Derrick, I'm sorry. It's having a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, something I hear a lot of static. I don't know what that static is, but I hear a lot of static. Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you. There's a little bit of feedback.
It's a bit of static.
Okay, go ahead. Try it now.
Still has static, but what I was saying, the young man was speaking after I finished my statement. He was saying some people are blind and they don't know the correct verbiage when you say defund the police. I'm very aware of the verbiage, and I'm not blind. And I look at this stuff from law enforcement perspective. I heard something that he's making may work and it may not work for the most. I don't think it will work. He's talking about social work. We need police officers to hand out tickets for us. You never know how prison's going to react when being pulled over. Whatever. You have to be trained in a situation like that. And social workers are still cutting out. Social workers are not trained to do these type of things. All that needs to stay in the hand of the police officer so he can adjust to the situation. If you pull me over, I'm irate, then how will a social worker deal with that? I'm going to give the social worker something to defend themselves. So if they don't respect the police officer in doing it, what makes you think they'll respect the social worker in doing this type of writing tickets and speaking to you about, you should just sit down and talk, and that's what a social worker is going to do. That's going to do absolutely no good. We're going to spin it to more lawlessness, and on, and life is going to be lost. Can you hear me, young lady?
I can understand you. I know some of the participants are having a hard time understanding what you're saying. And what I gathered, what I want to ask you, Derrick, if you don't mind, when you try getting off and coming back on, it might be something with the phone. If you're on your phone, that could be doing that. So try getting off and come back on. And I'm going, okay. He did it already. But basically what he was saying, and I'll let him, rephrase it too. But he was speaking to the fact that, if people are already having a hard time respecting or not being violent or agitated with police officers, why do we think that they would not do that with social worker? And he said that social workers are not trained to do this type of job. So hopefully he'll be able to come back on and be able to understand them a little bit more. And of course, as I stated to all of you guys, I do have a concern with things because I've seen, and I've worked with children myself that have gotten, aggressive, a little bit irate because they were on drugs or upset about a situation. And I was able to de-escalate it. Now they respected me. We had rapport. They knew I didn't play. I will love you. I will love you to life. I will love you forever. But I also don't play. So they knew that with me that, I had a line and, a certain respect that was expected. And so, but that was something that we built, so I get the conversation on both sides. So if anybody wants to address that a little bit while we wait for Derrick to come back on, that would be great.
I will real quick. We had a conversation on your Facebook page the other day with somebody who was talking about the shooting in Lansing over the mask issue, and they indicated that may have ended differently if they had sent a social worker to that call. And Ben even piped in and said that wasn't an appropriate call to send a social worker. I mean, the guy was already obviously violent. He stabbed the guy. That's how it started. So I think the issue, we addressed it briefly earlier, or we at least asked a question earlier. I'm not sure we've answered it. What is that line? Where do we figure out what is?
That's my question.
Yeah, we need to figure that line out. And I don't know what it's going to take to figure that line out, because, I mean, frankly, having done this for 23 years, I mean, police work, things go from 0 to 60 really quick. And, it may not seem like it's a violent crime when you're first dispatched, but it becomes a violent crime quickly. So that would be part of my concern. And I just want to throw that one out there. So.
Yeah, and I do have, and I see you all's hand, and that is my question, because who determines what's violent, what's not violent? Because I have seen, we've all seen, I mean, we've seen videos of routine traffic stops that, people drive off shooting at the police officer, or an officer gets shot, or, police officer ends up shooting them. So we've seen that happen. So that is a question. So I'm going to let, I saw Steph's hand up, respond to that. And then Derrick, I want you to kind of, I did kind of translate what you were saying, but I'm gonna let you speak for yourself. So I'll let Steph go ahead and respond to Rick's.
Yeah. So having worked in working in crisis situations for quite a while, Rick is right. It can go from 0 to 60 really quick, but also it comes down to like the support, and a lot of it does have to do with like policy change too. So It's not so much going to be about just like the person who answered the call, like they don't get to decide what's violent and what's not.
Right.
And so having said that, like it comes down to that, and then also getting citizens to be more involved. So like a citizen advisory board or something like that to help navigate and maybe figure out a way to come to a common ground that would make the community happy.
Okay. Derrick, if you want to, I kind of said that you were still a little bit of feedback. I kind of was stated that you were saying that social workers will not be able to do the job of a police officer. They're not trained. But I'll let you go ahead and speak to that.
Okay, I'm trying to pick up good reception because it was clear for a moment and it started back. But I think it's clear at this point. So
yes,
what I was saying.
So don't move.
What I was saying to the young man with Rick, I believe the red shirt on, was I heard him say that some people are blind and not verbal enough to understand defund the police.
Ben said that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I understand defunding, the word defund. I understand that. And also I heard him say something about social workers. Do you need a social worker to give you a ticket for running the stop sign or the traffic light or whatever else? Yes, you do need a trained police officer, because the situation, like the young man was just saying, can flip in a matter of seconds from friendly to violent. So we need a trained officer on the spot to deal with those situations. Also, a social worker cannot deal with like I was saying, with husband and wife issues. It's a lot of issues that we think as civilians that we could do ourselves and do a better job, but that is wishful thinking. We cannot do that. So I understand defund, and that's a powerful word. Once you say that, in my city, I live in New York City. My city, the crime rate has jumped up about 200%, even on the word defund. Because when you say defund, the first thing a criminal think, oh, well, I can do this and I can do that and I can get away with it. And they know the police hands are tied. The undercover cops is no more. So it's a lot of crimes that's going to go unsolved. And it's going by being like that, it's going to be a lot of people that get hurt and a lot of more issues that's going to arise from defunding police. We definitely do not need to defund police. Like I said, once again, in my community, we will suffer the most. In my community commits about 50% of the crime, and we are 13% of the population. We have gangs. We don't believe in law and order. Once you take police away from my community, it's the wild, wild west. Believe me, I noticed. I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, on the west side of Atlanta, Georgia, and I seen that. Police pull out the community, it's the wild, wild west, and you get more murders, you get more innocent children killed. We can absolutely not defund our police officer. Yes, we can restructure our police to do different things and to learn the different cultures of the community, and that will solve a lot of issues that's going on with the police, but definitely not defund the police.
So Derrick, it sounds like you don't agree with social workers doing this at all. You don't even agree with the ones where they say a social worker should be accompanied by a police officer. You're saying social workers should not be involved at all. Am I hearing that correctly?
Social workers should only be called on once the police have been to the scene and it's safe. Police know it's safe, think it's safe or whatever. Then you can call in a social worker. It's not going to hurt the police to wait on the social worker to get there and make sure the social worker is safe. The same is when you dial for an ambulance or whatever else. The police, that's why they send the police to make sure the situation is safe for the EMTs. They are not armed, so the police have to make sure the situation is safe. So if you send social workers to these places, it's the same exact thing. Social workers are going to end up getting killed and hurt just like the police. Now, I heard a young man say about our community, about the percentage of blacks being killed by the police. That is not factual true. More whites are getting killed by the police. We are only 13%, like I say again, and we commit 50% of the crime. So
you're missing the division part of the story problem, sir.
Getting killed by the police.
I'm sorry, you're missing the division part of the story problem.
Black man issue. We have a black on black crime issue. That is my big thing, black on black crime. Sure, we have bad police, we have bad doctors, we have bad everything in every profession. We have to work towards better than that, but not the defund. Defund is going to do absolutely nothing but kill off the rest of my community.
I think you're misunderstanding the term of defund and what we're trying to present here in a way that it's been said in the comment section over here off on the side. If you're like, people are asking, if you're taking away money that would go towards an officer, wouldn't that create an understaffing issue? And then Karen also commented and said that if you change the way you respond to offenses, such as traffic offenses, in using a surveillance system, you are freeing the police staff up in order to handle more serious issues. So it's a matter of distributing the wealth, almost like making sure the workload is taken care of in a way that the real issues are being addressed by the police. And I'm sorry, go ahead, Ben. I didn't mean to interject there.
No, you're good. I was just, so Mr. Gibson, what I was trying to say is, what's that?
He said he can't hear you.
Oh, what I was saying is that it is a fact, actually. It's a statistic. I don't know if you're refuting what the National Institute of Health is saying, but black people are killed at a higher rate than white people. The numbers are higher because there are more white people in the country. So it's like a story problem in math. You have to do the division. If you want to refute what the scientific community, what the government is putting out there, what CNN is putting out there, I got nothing for you. As far as black on black crime, that is actually a misnomer. There's no such thing. There's proximity crime.
So Mr. Gibson, basically what he's saying is that, you know, because there are more white people, so how do I want to say it? Because people always get kind of, I don't want to use the word confused, but there's always this misinterpretation on both sides of this. But I will say that because of the numbers, blacks, they're saying, are killed more because of it's like so I'm not a math person, so don't get me started with the math part of it. But I really do want to talk about the whole black on black crime thing, because that's always something that's very interesting to me when people say that, because I have lived in all different type of communities, and in all those communities, there's crime in those communities against each other, right? So if you live somewhere where it's majority white, the crime is against each other there. And then if you live somewhere where it's predominantly black, there's crime there as well. And I believe that if you take out police in any community where people like to have a lot of crime, they will feel free. I mean, it is true that a lot of people do not know how to self-govern. I was looking at a thing earlier that did a test in regards to shopping carts in groceries, and it sounds so silly, but it was really funny. And they talked about that's like an ultimate test of being able to self-govern, how people can't even walk the cart to its location, and they put it wherever they want to. But my point is that I think that a lot of people, if they don't have any type of law in their area, they will become a little bit more rowdy. So I don't think it's just in a black community. I think that it's wherever people feel free to do what they want to do. So I will let you respond to that, Mr. Gibson.
Yes, I'm not misunderstanding or misinterpreting what he's saying. Maybe he's misunderstanding what I am saying myself. Because,
and that could be possible.
Yeah, because the black community, I understand it's more whites in America, Hispanics or whatever. I understand that, but it's absolutely no excuse for 13% of the black population to have a 50% crime rate. They're absolutely not. It makes absolute no sense. So therefore, if you remove the police, it's going to rise. That's what I'm saying. It's going to rise. If you defund police, sure, you say we don't need police for this. We don't need police to free them up. They could be doing something more important. Everything is important. And we have, in my city, in New York City, we have enough police to deal with it all. We don't have a problem where it's not enough officers to take care of this or take care of that. We have enough officers to do just that. By defunding those officers, we're not going to have enough officers. So it's going to take the police longer to respond. The more people may get hurt in the situation or killed in the situation because we don't have enough officers to respond. Where a social worker is calling the police after the social worker been here, it's too late. Maybe the social worker and me, myself, is gone. So we have to look at it as in common sense terms and say, defunding is a no-no. It's a zero. That it can't be allowed to go forward at all. I am, like I said before, I've been arrested by police officers. I did a lot, driving without license, did all kind of crap. You know, the thing about, like I said, reform, they should have taken me to jail for that. I should have been written a ticket. That's what should have happened. I was driving without insurance. Same thing. Go to jail. And mind you, these are not white police officers. These were black police officers in Atlanta, Georgia, where the black people run Atlanta, Georgia. So I experienced police issues from police by my own black brothers and sisters because it's a police thing and not a race thing. So we need to get back to looking at the police in general and the police union. The thin blue line need to be sawed up, cut up, thrown away, and the police force will work better. I'm a union guy myself. But unions get in the way sometimes. I disagree with my union. Unions get in your way sometimes for actually repairing the problem that needs to be repaired. But no, police defunding is a non-starter with me.
Okay, Rick, I want you to kind of chime in. You haven't, you've been just sitting back and enjoying the conversation. So I want you to, kind of weigh in on this a little bit since you work in the field.
Well, I mean, I think Mr. Gibson's got some very valid points. I mean, you pull police out of these communities, obviously you're going to have increased crime. I mean, the violent crime rate in Flint this year is up 169%. What do you attribute that to? I mean, as I indicated, 30 years ago, when I hired on the Flint Police Department, there were 300 officers. When I left, there were around 100, and there's under 90 now, is my understanding. So, these officers are stepping and fetching. They log on duty and they're 40 calls behind. And they don't even respond to quality of life issues anymore. They don't respond to breaking and entry calls where there's not a suspect on scene. They don't respond to dog barking complaints, things that are true quality of life issues. People think about, somebody's garage got broken into and their lawnmower got stolen. Well, obviously that's a low priority for a police officer in Flint, Michigan, or maybe even in New York City, where you have a lot more serious crimes to be responding to. But for the person whose lawnmower got stolen, that's a big deal.
Right.
So that's a quality of life issue. And, I've said repeatedly, we talk about communities turning things around. Flint used to be a booming city. The home of General Motors, and it had 200,000 residents, and everything was going great. And then GM started pulling out, the economy crashed, and we've been under mend ever since. So what does it take to turn Flint around? Well, I think it takes two things. I think it takes a perception of safety, and when I say a perception of safety, you don't have to necessarily be crime free. I mean, every community has crime.
Right.
You have to at least feel safe. If you call 911, a police officer can show up. He'll take your complaint. He'll give it to a detective. And even if that detective doesn't end up doing anything with your case, you at least feel like something was done. That's not happening in communities like Flint. You're not getting a police officer when you call 911. You're not getting a call from a detective. They can't. They just can't. They're dealing with murders and rapes and robberies. They don't have time to deal with a stolen lawnmower or a stolen bicycle or your quality of life issue. So there's no perception of safety. So communities like Flint and Saginaw and Detroit and New York and all these big towns where they have real crime issues, it's going to take a lot to turn these things around. So unless you have a perception of safety and a viable school system, these communities aren't going to turn around.
Okay. Ben, did you have anything to say to that?
It sounds like there's kind of some overlap in what I've said about criminal justice reform, where a lot of crimes, and I don't want to speak on property crime because Rick touched on that. And I think that is something that still could be pursued, property crime and violent crime. But otherwise, why are we chasing after these things like disturbing the peace, right? When it comes to traffic violations, I don't think traffic stops in most cases need to happen unless there's a crash where there's a fatality, or a serious injury, sure. But traffic cams can spot you, as I said last time, running a red light, send you a citation in the mail, and you pay a fine, right? So I think that there's probably already a good number of these things that aren't being addressed by police, where we could just revisit the laws and reform laws in general so that it's a non-issue, and that would probably help both sides, because then people are feeling safer when it comes to the violent crime. They have the resources to actually address it with the force that they do have still. And then the societal issues, social workers can deal with them, sure. I do want to say too, though, back to proximity crime, the reason why we don't live by one another and communities are segregated has to do with redistricting, or with redlining. I'm sorry, with redlining. There was a practice back when, after World War II, Black GIs couldn't use their GI Bill to buy a house in the same community as, like, say, my ancestors. But so we don't live by one another, and that's why there's this misnomer of black on black crime. There's white on white crime too. You don't hear that, though, because it doesn't play into the narrative that people want you to play into, which is hatred, quite frankly, whether that's self-hatred or oppressive hatred. But either way, that's what it is. So there's that.
Okay. Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
And then Steph, I see you next. Did you want to address that?
I didn't hear it, so you're going to have to.
We lost him. So Steph, go ahead and say your part, and then hopefully he can come back on.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just I'm going to address Rick a little bit here in what he said. Like, the police officers are taking so many calls, and when they get on shift, they're not able to respond to all those calls. So it does sound like there's already a police officer shortage. So my question was, what would be the harm in sending to a social worker out to some of those calls that the police can't actually respond to at that time? Or not even a social worker necessarily. It could be just another representative of law enforcement, or the actual police department. So.
Okay. Rick?
Yeah, I'll tell you in Flint that the crimes I was talking about that the police can't respond to, they're not sending police to those anymore at all. There's actually an online process for making complaints, so the citizens can go online, make a complaint. It gets sent into the program, gets sent to a detective, and the detectives do whatever follow up they can. The problem is, what real crime solving is being done here. If you have a B&E and there's maybe fingerprints or evidence at the scene that can be collected and used to help solve the crime, otherwise it's just a revolving cycle of B&Es. You got the same B&E boy that's hitting 20 houses a night, and nobody ever gets to solve it because we don't have any real evidence to go back and trace it back to who's doing it. We might pick up something that was pawned at the pawn shop, and maybe we get somebody. But I mean, the reality is that all the stuff that we're talking about, I mean, traffic stops, for example, are a huge, huge way to solve crime or stop crime, prevent crime. Ben made a comment about, unless there's an accident or a fatality, what's the big deal with, doing a traffic thing? But, if there's no enforcement of traffic laws, then people will start thinking there's no enforcement of any laws. They can get away with whatever. And if you stop writing speeding tickets, for example, if you quit putting a state trooper in the median, then people are going to do 100. I mean, they do it now, and the trooper's in the median. So, what's going to stop them from doing that every day? And then, right now it's just the handful of people that are doing it. But once there's no troopers in the median, nobody's writing the traffic tickets, then everybody's going to be doing 100.
So,
Okay.
Back to what Eric was saying about people doing 100 and things like that. Again, I feel like that's something traffic cams could pick up, and then you get a citation issued as far as that goes. If it went unpaid, sure. I think that when it comes to serving warrants, that's certainly not something I think is appropriate for social workers. I think that's something appropriate for police. But I think one issue about some of the most vulnerable communities being underfunded in every aspect is because it's based on property taxes, right? So what if we had, and this argument's been made for education for a long time, what if we had a statewide budget for police and the funds were distributed accordingly and more evenly, and especially to those who need it the most? I mean, that would solve a lot of the issues with shortages and, again, the most vulnerable of communities.
Okay, Derrick, I'm going to let you go ahead and say a bit since you got cut off.
I didn't hear what being said when you first asked me to respond. So if you want to kind of break it down a little bit, and then I can respond. But I did hear what Rick said about the traffic laws and that policing the traffic laws, and I heard a young man say that if someone going 100 miles per hour, maybe the speed cam will get them and give them a ticket. Okay, that's all well and fine, but he's gonna keep going 100 miles per hour on down the street until he hits somebody and run over and kill somebody going 100 miles. But if the officer is out there, it's gonna stop that. Possibly stop that by getting this guy a ticket, and then he's gonna slow himself down and try to safely drive on. But social workers for socialism, not for law enforcement or none of that's not going to solve the issues that we have. But if you want to ask me what did he say, tell me what he said earlier, I can respond to it.
Oh, sure. He was speaking to, if I remember correctly, he was speaking to how black on black crime is basically a myth because if you lived in a white community, they have crime against each other as well. So that's essentially the sum, if I remember correctly, of what he was speaking to.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. I live in a black community. I have lived all my life, and I am a black man, as you can clearly see, a real dog black man. So it's not factual correct by you saying it's a myth, black on black crime. It's a fact, it's black on black crime. If you look daily at the things happening in Chicago, Atlanta, New York City, Baltimore, it's black on black crime. The highest rate of death amongst the blacks, more than the KKK back in the days. We are killing each other at a rate higher than the KKK ever did us. So the black on black crime is not a myth. It's factual. It's what is going on today, what was going on yesterday, and it's going to continue to go on. And by dumping money into community programs is going to do absolutely no good. That does no good. The issue is there are no black men in the home. There are no black uncles and aunties trying to coach and help these young people and raise them the right way with godly love and respect for authority. It's law and order everywhere in life, and it starts in the home as raising your children from little ones. I have 5 kids. I haven't had an issue with them and the police at all because they are respectful and they know if they're breaking the law or whatever, that's on them. I'm breaking the law. When the police catch you, hey, there's no fight back. It's none of that. So when we start raising our children, not dumping money, you can dump trillions of dollars into the black community. Every other community is not going to solve that issue. Police is not the problem. The problem starts in the home. We are the problem. And for you to sit up here and say that it's a myth for black on black crime, man, that is. Are you a white guy? Do you live in the black community, or what? Cause I can't see you that good. You look like a bright skinned black guy to me, so I'm not
sure. So I am a white guy. I have lived in black communities. I do live in the darker part of my town, I suppose. So there's that. But what I was saying is not that it's a myth; it's a misnomer. What there is there's proximity crime. People commit crimes around who they live around. So the real question is, why don't we live around one another? And I spoke a little bit about the practice of redlining, where real estate companies were having racist practices that stopped black GIs from using their GI Bill to purchase homes in predominantly white communities. And that's basically why we are still segregated by and large. Why don't we hear white on white crime when whites commit crime against whites on a regular basis? We don't hear it because it doesn't play into the narrative of hate.
I hear.
That's why.
I personally hear, I'm in the community, and of course, the mainstream media is not going to tell you that, but I personally hear, and I work back in the law enforcement field also. Like I said before, I investigated police misconduct. It's a police thing. It's not, I would say, segregation or none of that. Of course, in my community, I live in a mostly Jewish community. I choose to live here because of the crime is so bad in the black community. So I don't want to live there. I don't want to subject my children to all the criminal acts and criminal elements in the black community. That's why I live in a Jewish community where the crime rate is slim to none right here in New York City, if you can believe that. It's actually slim to none. I'm a black man as Trump supporter. I can walk outside my Trump hat on, Trump shirt, walk anywhere in my neighborhood. I get no backlash or nothing. If I go to the black community, I may get killed just by wearing a hat or a cap. So,
that's unfortunate.
Yeah, but it's just it's the truth, and that's what it is. But I choose not to say I don't want to live in a black community. I do want to live in I don't want to live in a world where there's no color because God has no respect of a person. So therefore God don't see color. We just need to look within ourselves in our own communities, the white man, the black man, every other man. Let's look at ourselves first. Let's clean up ourselves before we look out and say, well, this is a problem with this is a problem with that. No, stop breaking the law, because guess what? Your neighbors set that law, and they hired these police officers to enforce the law. So that means the majority of your neighbors set this law. And we have law. Once we establish law and order, we don't have a police problem, and we bring respect and godly love back to our homes, and we'll be just fine. But throwing money into community, this social work, it's all garbage. That's garbage. We got to get back to the basics, use common sense, and then we can fix the issues in our communities.
So I just want to just kind of respond to a few things. So I agree with with everything that, different things that people are saying. I will share something with you, Derrick. I'm from Cincinnati originally, and I moved to a predominantly white area called Price Hill. Okay, and people from Cincinnati know Price Hill. Price Hill was considered, and please don't get offended by this, is just what it was called, the white ghetto. Okay, so it was, poor. It was poor white people that lived there, and it was crime all the time. As a matter of fact, I had to move because there was crime all the time. So my point in saying that is that I really don't, and they had, single parent homes as well. They had single mothers struggling with their children as well. They were on food stamps. They were on government assistance. So my point is that, me personally, I don't see things as this is just a black problem or a white problem. This is a class problem. Okay. So when people have, different prejudices against people of a certain class, then they are treated differently. Just as we know, if you go to one neighborhood, a Wendy's will look like a professional building. And I'm like, oh, that's a fast food business, but then if you go to other areas, it looks like it should be condemned. So again, a lot of this is a class issue for me, in regards to that, because I've worked with families. I've worked with a lot of white families. And a lot of them were also on different assistance. They also had a lot of domestic domestic issues. They had a lot of, needs. They had a lot of disrespectful children as well. You know what I'm saying? So this is again, when you are struggling, and I believe this wholeheartedly, sometimes when you are struggling and you are considered the bottom of the barrel by society, you get left out of a lot of discussions. You get left out of a lot of fundings and a lot of things. So you respond, the way that you're treated sometimes. Sometimes not all of us can rise above. I too, had some times in my life where, I was homeless and I was close to homelessness, where we didn't have food, we didn't have things, but I thankfully had a spirit within me that was able to keep pushing and keep fighting and not take that situation as the end all for me. But I have seen people who they have succumbed to it. So I just wanted to point that out, that for me, I think that it's more of a class issue and not a black versus white issue. And I think sometimes when we talk like that, that's where some of the divide comes from, and we aren't able to come to the table and really help each other. So I just wanted to add that in. Did somebody have a point they wanted to, what'd you say, Derrick? I'm sorry.
I was just saying thank you, but like I said, color, we hung up on color, but we do have to look within, regardless of
sure.
black, you white, or whatever. We have to look within and say, what is our issue? And let's straighten that out first, and then we move to another community. You're right, class got a lot to do with it too. That don't mean you act this way or that way. That means you act appropriate according to the words of God. And that's how you handle issues, and that's how they are worked out. But just saying continuously being a victim is not the answer to anything. I'm a victim. We are beyond a victim now. We have to look at ourselves and say, what is the problem lies within me, within my children, how I speak to authority in front of my children. When a police officer stops me, am I yelling at the police officer in front of my 5-year-old child? So that means I'm showing my child it's okay to do this. And that's the problem coming out of, I can speak for my community. I can't speak for the white community. We are different. So we must face, we are different. Regardless of color, we are different, and situation gonna have to be handled totally different. Like I said, police training got to be culture. You got to get knowledge in that culture and say, okay, this is how they act, and this don't mean this, or it don't mean they gonna do this or that. Their culture. That's what the police need to learn. They just see people culture to play loud music, to do this or to do that. That's our culture. And different community. Once we learn that, we know how to deal with the community better by being a police officer. We become their friends because we understand it. If we don't understand, we think it is something to harm us. And that's why we're looking at the white police officer coming out of the neighborhood. It's going to harm us. Because the average police officer don't know the culture or the different person from them. They don't know that. So it causes friction between those. And it may not be nothing but, hey, I just don't understand. That's all. And everybody needs to come together. Understanding we'll be better off.
No, I totally agree with you on that. And again, I really believe that goes to because anybody that knows me knows I'm the first person that believes in accountability. Okay. I don't play victim to anything. I believe my life matters. I don't need anybody to tell me that. I understand the sentiment behind it. But again, with my children, I have 4 young men. They knew to respect everybody. I didn't care what I taught them to respect people. Okay. So, and that's a personal thing, of course, and again, I just wanted to make sure I clarify that I don't think it's a set, because when we generalize people, we miss points for me, everybody is their own individual, and yes. And I've lived again in white communities where white children blast music too. I mean, they are disrespectful. They put stuff on the track. So it's just a personal, journey that person goes on and how they're raised and what they're taught to respect. Man, I knew you had your hand up. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to speak so much.
Oh, no worries. It's your show. It's your world. We're just living in it. Anyway, what I was going to say is that I've heard the word accountability a couple of times. And Rick, to rewind to last week, I know that you said that good cops hate bad cops, right? I can appreciate that. Again, I don't believe in completely doing away with the police force. I know everybody's kind of gone off into some anecdotes. I've been trying to stick to facts, but I will share that my great uncle, Ben Ray Walker, you can Google him right now, was a Genesee County sheriff who was shot and killed in the line of duty. So I do respect the work that police do. However, I just think that they get tasked with things that they're not really accustomed to deal with. And a lot of that does have to do with class. And when you're talking about people of lower socioeconomic status, that's my jam. That's what I do. That's what I'm trained to do, is help people rise up out of poverty, by and large. And there's that. But I wanted to say too that when it comes to accountability, I think that everybody can agree that Breonna Taylor was wrongfully killed. I think that everybody can agree that Elijah McClain was wrongfully killed. And Rick, since you said that good cops hate bad cops, I'm wondering if you would sponsor a petition by police and former police to have the bad cops in those cases arrested and hold them accountable.
Well, what kind of petition are you talking about? Because here's the deal. Both of those cases, the facts aren't as cut and dry as you indicated. So we'll talk about a couple of them one at a time. So the first one we'll talk about is Taylor, the Taylor case. There were 5 search warrants that were issued that had to do with that investigation that they were involved in. And one of them was specifically for her apartment. Now, I know there was rumors on the internet that, excuse me, that they hit the wrong apartment, but that's not true. The search warrant was actually for her apartment. In fact, it included her street address, her apartment number. There were 4 photos of her apartment door, and her birth date, social security number, and everything were listed right in the warrant. And when the officers went in, her boyfriend shot at the police. One of the officers was wounded, and they returned fire. So if she was a casualty, which she obviously was, because I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that she was shooting at the police, but I don't think we can sit here and say that these police were acting improperly necessarily. If she wasn't sleeping in her bed, she was in the hallway when they found her. So that was another piece of misinformation. So the investigation was conducted and the officers were cleared. So I'm not sure what any petition would do in that case. And then in the McClain case, the officers were sent by dispatch to investigate that guy. There was a call that came in about a suspicious person. He was wearing a ski mask, walking on the road, waving his arms, acting crazy. When the police tried to talk to him, he refused, pulled away. They tried to stop him and detain him just to do an investigation. He refused to cooperate with the police and then began to struggle with the police. And the police said that he tried to take one of the officers' weapons. And so then a wrestling match ensued. He got arrested. When he seemed to be in distress, they called an ambulance. The ambulance gave him a shot of some kind of depressant to sedate him. And the autopsy was inconclusive what he died from. So I'm not sure what it is you want a petition to be started for, because those cases aren't cut and dry where there's police misconduct.
I disagree, but I can agree to disagree with you and just accept your answer of no. That's okay.
I mean, I don't disagree. I told you before, good cops hate bad cops. If those guys would have done something completely out of line, God bless you, man. I mean, let's go back to Minneapolis, which has started all this defund the police talk to begin with. That guy was wrong. What he did was wrong. I couldn't even watch the whole video. And I did that job for 23 years.
You're talking about the officer. You're talking about the officer.
Yeah, that guy kneeled on that guy's neck for, 10 minutes or whatever? I saw
8 minutes and 46 seconds.
I saw his urine running underneath the car. I couldn't watch it anymore. That was wrong. That's clearly police misconduct. These other cases aren't as cut and dry. So I don't know that I could agree with you about starting a petition drive in those 2 cases necessarily. If you want a petition to say that this guy's guilty in Minneapolis of police misconduct, I'll sign the petition today.
Okay, I can respect that. I know Derek, you wanted to kind of, since Rick, you brought up the riots, because that is kind of what started all of this, right? This conversation in regards to defunding the police reform, the stuff that happened with in Minneapolis. So, Derek, I know that you had some different thoughts in regards to the whole protesting, riots, Black Lives Matter movement. That is a whole nother discussion in itself, but I will let you touch on a little bit of what you feel about it.
But going back to George Floyd, that was despicable, and that was a sad day in the history of the United States. That was just, it wasn't. This guy had to be filled with evil, not just a racial thing. I believe it was deeper than that. Maybe they crossed each other's paths with a young lady or whatever. I believe that what it was about. But it's absolutely 100% no excuse for what he did. But then the riots ensued. I can understand the protest. You have a right. You have a guarantee right in the Constitution. You can protest your government to make change or whatever. I'm with that 100%. I'll be out there with you 100%. But when it goes to the rioting and looting and destroying, you have crossed the line. You have another agenda. It's not about justice anymore. And the longer it went on and just kept going, it got worse. So that showed me it wasn't for justice for none of that. The guy was arrested. Let it play out in the courts. He was arrested. We got that. Let it play out in the court. Why destroy cities? Why tear down statues? Why do any of these things? The Black Lives Matter situation thing, I don't agree with. I am a black man, and I know my Black Lives Matter. Like you said earlier, young lady, I don't need a shirt to tell me that. I don't need it painted on the street to tell me that my life matter, because I know it. As a person, my life is my God-given right to breathe. That's my God-given right. But Black Lives Matter organization, I am 100% against it. It's if you look at some of the things the founders said about destroying the nuclear family, so forth and so on, it's ridiculous, sad. And train Marxists, it's only, I think what's behind this is something deeper, outside forces trying to take our attention away from what is being more sinister plot being enacted in the United States of America. It goes very deep. If you look at the currency now and you go to some stores, you'll see that, well, we don't have any change, have correct change, or we're going to have to round it off until if something costs $2.75, okay, just give me $3, but we don't have any change. That's called hyperinflation. So we need to be looking deeper than just these current acts that is going on. That is something to take our eyes off for what is being enacted into the United States of America. Also with this pandemic that has went on and on and on forever. It's I don't totally believe 100% that yes, the thing is real, the virus is real. Yes, it is, just like the flu and everything else is real. But it's more to it with the lockdown, with the mandate of wearing the mask. Look behind the scene and see what's going on. You are being led. Things are changing for the one world order, and they're doing it quick while they got your attention over here with this Black Lives Matter protest. So I went to Occupy City Hall in New York. So I said, I'm gonna go talk to these people. So we had a little pushback from the beginning, but then the leader came out, a young lady, that particular day, and we talked. And I told her I was running for governor, and we want equal justice for all this, that, and they began to come around and say they would support me. So I went back again 3 weeks later, which was last Saturday. I went back, and a young man was there, the leader, and I called him out to talk. And he looked at my card, he looked at me, so well, you's an Uncle Tom, you's a coon, you this and that. So I didn't come here for that. I came in to see what do you want, because you are occupying a private park that belongs to the taxpayer, do not belong to just you yourself, and you're not allowing people to come in. So he got irate and just crazy. So these people really don't want law at all. They want to be able to do whatever the hell they want to do when they want to do it. They don't care if you're Republican, whether you're Democrat or not. But since the Democrats are leading this thing and they seem to be okay with it, they using them so they can get what they want. But they're going to turn on you. They're going to turn on me and everybody else. This thing has to be shut down. They're taking a private property. They're destroying a private property. We have to arrest these people. They're tearing down our history. Those statues don't offend me. That rubber flag don't offend me, because I move forward. I do not look backwards driving. I look forward driving. And I excel. I have educated myself. I earned 2 degrees. And you can't tell me that systemic racism out here, because it's not. Yes, racism is in our country, but America is not a racist country like people trying to push that. It's definitely not. So let's come together if we can and talk to each other. If there's any way we can talk instead of just yelling back and forth, we could get some things worked out and get them solved. But from my opinion, Black Lives Matter don't want to solve anything. Like the guy said up here, in the leader in New York City, that he want to burn the system completely down. Figurative liberty. That's what he said on the news when I seen that clip. So it's not about justice. It's about getting rid of the entire system, and we are being blinded while we may get taken over by Chinese and Russian. And the Russian. I think it's a conspiracy theory if you want to, and wake up and find out that you're under their control.
So I have a couple questions, Derrick, because I'm trying to remember and I have bad memory, so I'm trying to keep up with what you're saying. So I always like to clarify this because people often talk about Black Lives Matter, and I too have some concerns regarding the organization, right? And its purpose, okay, and what they're doing in regards to like the funds they've raised. Why is it not going into these communities that they're saying that they're supporting? So I have my own questions about that. For me, sometimes I think that it gets misconstrued where a person says they're for the Black Lives Matter organization, or are they saying I'm a black life, I matter. And it's a difference for me, So sometimes people that put together these protests or rallies, they're literally saying, I'm a Black life that matters. Most people don't even know how the organization started or that it's even an organization. Unfortunately, they don't even know that. And then I just wanted to say, it was proven that, some of the riots and a lot of the riots and destruction came from outside forces, right? So it wasn't always the people that were actually in those cities. And I'm not saying that there wasn't any rioting or looting going on by the people there, but I'm saying that there was some things, coming in. So I just wanted to talk to that. So, and I know Steph had a little bit of a thing because she has been a part of a lot of rallies and protests. So I'm going to let her kind of talk to that too.
Yeah. So actually my first protest was the first one that they held in Detroit after George Floyd's murder. And so my intention of going down there was to stand in between the police and the protesters at these rallies so that I could use my privilege to the advantage of everyone that was there. So what I did was I ran medic, and then I stood in between the police and the protesters. And what ended up happening, and there's many accounts of this, they used the kettling technique, which is a military tactic, and they took us from peacefully protesting in the streets, somehow ended up pinning us so that we were stuck down by Port Authority, and then they took out the riot police with their gear, with their shields, banging their shields, escalating the entire situation. Someone was pushing themselves towards the police. And like I said, myself and my friend, we both were down there to put ourselves in between to keep people safe. I redirected someone that was pushing herself into the police. And at that time, I made the mistake of turning my back, and I was pummeled to the ground by an officer in riot gear. And fortunately, before the other officers laid themselves on top of me to arrest me, my friend that was with me threw himself on my back and was able to prevent me from taking the brunt of the hit. He ended up with bruises and scratches all over his body. It was a complete misuse of force. And all it was people were finally being able to stand up in front of law enforcement and say the things that they have always wanted to say and never had an opportunity to, in which was a safe situation for them, where they knew they might not be going to jail for voicing their feelings. And back to, this is something that hit me really hard, and it seems so minimal, but hearing a woman of color say that she was tired of getting pulled over for driving a nice vehicle. Profiling happens constantly, and it's not okay. There's multiple people in these comments here off on the side talking about how they are pulled over for absolutely no reason with their families. And that's where Ben's point coming in of having traffic cams and making sure that people are being held accountable for the crimes they are committing, even if it doesn't mean getting pulled over and racially profiled. And somebody else mentioned that in Flint, they're pulling people over at traffic stops and they're able to like filter to find the like the guns that are being brought into the community. And sure, that's great and all, but how many of those people are being pulled over and don't have a weapon, but are just being pulled over for being a person of color? I can't take it anymore. Like, it took me a long time to get to where I am right now, where I'm standing for what I believe in. I have tried so hard to stay off my, stay off a pedestal and let the people of color talk. So in talking to a few people of color, I was told that the majority of them are exhausted. They're tired of speaking for themselves. They have been doing it for hundreds of years and no one's listening. They're tired and they want us to speak up for them. And so that's what I'm doing. There is absolutely a misuse of power when it comes to these situations with the police. And it even goes back, you can look at the Stanford experiment in which plainclothes college students were put into a program to see if they were able to kind of gain that feeling of authority by being put into a police uniform and being prison guards. And even though it was an experiment, they lost their sense of humanity towards the people who were the prisoners, and they took it to a whole different level that was entirely unnecessary. And that's just a small example, a small experiment, and there it does come with some controversy, but that's a really good basic term or basic example that I learned in my first sociology class. And again, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go on a rant, but this is something I'm really passionate about because I was one of the first 6 people to be arrested. We were there. We were all white. We were standing in between the police to keep the protesters safe. And the 6 of us that were arrested, we were detained for about 2 hours at Port Authority. And then they released us and told us we couldn't go through downtown or risk getting arrested again. So we had to walk miles. I think my friend and I walked probably a good 15 to 20 miles that night, just trying to get back around the protest. We weren't trying to instigate anything. If the police had kept under control, nothing would have escalated. It was a peaceful protest and the police took it out of hand. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. Everybody is sharing. Derrick, you had your finger up. Rick, did you have anything to say after this?
I'll let Derrick go.
Okay, sure.
I just want to say to this young lady, I don't know your heart, but from listening to you, I have no use for a individual, a white individual, for you to come to a rally and stand up for me. I'm very capable of myself expressing my feelings and the feelings of my community. To me, it seems like you are agitated. You may not know. Like I said, I don't know your heart. You may not be. You might be trying to do the best that you can do. But it's people like you that I see in the Black Lives Matter movement that's pushing stuff to an explosion. I do not like for people to come in and stand between me or the police. I know I control myself. The average person know how to control themselves. Let that go. And then something else you said was the police harass you, and it was a peaceful protest. Why are you in the street? Protests are not to be in the street while cars are given unless it's designated. You said they cattle you up. That's the job of the police, to cattle you up. Give you a spot to protest in, not in the street, hindering me driving through, tearing up businesses. So the police, in my opinion, the police was doing their job, and they was doing their job well. I'm sorry you got arrested. I don't know why you got arrested, but peacefully doing something, I don't understand why would you get arrested. If a law enforcement officer asks you to stand over here or stand to the side, you should obey that command.
Okay, but that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened was we were obeying their demands, and they brought out the police in their riot gear, and they escalated the situation. We were there was we had permission to be in the streets. The streets were blocked off. They had the streets blocked off. They were protecting us at the beginning, and then they decided that they were going to just go ahead and bring us into the center. And we had nowhere to go. We could not leave. They wouldn't let us walk down the sidewalk. They wouldn't let us walk anywhere. We were stuck down by Port Authority. And we had nowhere to go. We couldn't back up.
I don't know what's behind that young lady, but I've been to 2 of those, 3 or 4 of those protests in New York City and in Atlanta, Georgia. And what I've seen is completely different than what you're saying. And sure, the people come from out of town and everywhere else inciting stuff, laying bricks in the middle of the street for us to pick up and destroy our own business in Atlanta, Georgia, our own business in Atlanta, Georgia. I was there when this happened, mind you. And these were white people that was coming in, wearing the Black Lives Matter shirts, holding the Black Lives Matter sign, and encouraging us to tear up the building and all kinds of stuff. And my black-owned business got destroyed also. And that's just a black-owned business. We don't care. Black people don't own nothing. And this is what was said. And with the white liberals, this is me, 100%. White liberals, I have no use for you. You are bending over too hard backwards, trying to prove to me that you are not the racist. But to me, you are the racist because you're coming in my community and you haven't destroyed my community, and you're going back to your good community and you sleeping good, and you come back tomorrow. And
you said you live in a good community, sir. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't live in the greatest community by any means.
You come back and you purchase my community for quarters on the dollar because I'm not going to rebuild the way y'all destroyed it. So I'm going to sell it and move on out of that community.
You don't understand. You don't understand because what I was doing was making sure that those things didn't happen so that it didn't escalate, because at that point, okay, I'm sorry.
You take over my community, and I can no longer, it's called gentrification, I can no longer stay there. So what you are doing, you are my worst enemy, because you are not tearing your neighborhood up. You coming in my neighborhood, destroying my neighborhood that I personally own and can't afford to be up back, and you sneaking in the back door, buying it from under me. That is my feeling, and I have seen that happen. Now you can speak. Thank you.
So Derrick, so I think that we can agree that there are definitely were people coming into the communities that were purposely tearing them up. I think we all can agree to that. That was proven. That was something that happened. I think that we're all very passionate about this discussion because it is a big discussion, and we have different viewpoints in regards to it. I'm very passionate about it. I get tired of Now again, I'm a little different. I have not gone around saying please say my life matters. I don't do that. Okay. But I understand the sentiment. I understand it. So with that said, when people hear that and then they say, Black Lives Matter is this, that, and the other, I think people are missing the point. I think that, when we talk about equality, because I wanted to speak to that too, because I know Rick last week or when we spoke about this, we talked about laws and stuff, and maybe it wasn't you that mentioned, I can't remember, but I know people say, we have different laws for all people. And I know even when I've spoken to some of the different patriots, and Derrick knows Ryan, who I had on a couple weeks ago, we talk about everybody having the same laws, but I just wanted to know from you guys, can we at least admit that everybody is not treated the same underneath those different laws, that they are not always applied to everybody the same way? I mean, Rick, and I know you being an officer, I would like to ask you, because I understand that we have a constitution. I understand that we have different laws. I get it. And it would be beautiful if, and I understand the people that are standing up saying we're going to, enforce the constitution. We're going to make sure that all people have this applied to them. But can we at least admit that it is not always equally distributed, the consequences? Are we able to admit that?
Well, I mean, I'll address this way. I mean, obviously, I'm a defense attorney, so
yes,
I absolutely support the Constitution, and I know that everybody has a right to be defended properly and all that stuff. So, and I like to think that my 23 years on the police department, I treated people equally. And I think I said last time I was on here, and I don't remember if I did or not, but there was plenty of white guys that took a butt whooping from me because they had one coming, and so, I mean, I was kind of equal opportunity when it came to that, I didn't pick and choose, but some people, I've seen some of the comments down the side, and what they were talking about, some of it was, I saw one earlier that said, white people can talk to the police any way they want, nothing ever happens. That's absolutely was not the case when I was working. That's not how it went. I mean, I expect to be, if I treat you with respect, I expect to be treated with respect. and vice versa. If you treat me with respect, I'll treat you with respect. I mean, I'm not going out there.
Right. We can't admit though that and not speaking about you, and I know you can only speak for yourself, but just kind of generally speaking, that's not always applied. We do understand that there is sometimes a profiling that goes on in different communities. I mean, and I think sometimes we have subconscious biases that we're not aware of, that we learn. I was speaking to someone the other day, and if you are a person that grows up only around people that look like you, whoever it is, black, white, Hispanic, whatever, the only connection that you have to people that are unlike you is, via the media or via, whatever, a TV show or what have you, your perception of them is kind of based around that, right? So when you grow up and you get these jobs, sometimes we have different ideas about a person that we're not even privy to sometimes. So I just always like to ask that question, like, can we at least admit that, and I think that we all are on the same page of there needs to be a reform, that there is some stuff that is broken that needs to take place. How we get there is a disconnect, and the different destinations by doing that is also a disconnect. Some people think that nothing needs to happen in regards to defunding. We're taking money away, and I get that part of it too. I will be honest, I get that part only because I know for a fact if someone is investing, say, $20 into me, I'm just throwing out a number, and then they start only investing 10, but want me to do the same job, I may think differently about it. That's just honest. But I do think that there's some things that need to happen. So I want everybody to give a closing remark on their view or something they want to say. I know we went over. This is a really good conversation, and I really appreciate everybody for being, transparent and honest with how they feel. We should all feel safe and okay with sharing how we feel, because this is how we make changes. This is how we all come to the table. So I'm going to, Ben, if you want to go ahead and kind of give some closing remarks.
Yeah, I know we went over, so I'm just going to keep it short and sweet again.
Go for it.
I appreciate the opportunity to be on and talk to you all, and leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ben. Steph?
Yeah, I just it is about Black lives, but it's not just about Black lives. It's about equality across the board. I've always been a huge advocate for every marginalized member of a community, any community. So anybody who knows me knows that's my passion, and that's what I've always done. So I'm going to keep continuing to do it, because if I'm not, then who is? Like, we need some change, and we need it now. And we've tried to do it all of the quiet ways we could. And I think it says a lot that we're using our voices. The youth especially are using their voices, and there's change happening across the country. I just saw, I can't remember if it was Pinellas Park, Florida, but they are doing police reform, and they're taking those positions that can't be filled by officers, and they're filling them with social workers. So I'm curious to see how that plays out, see what kind of budgeting and like policies they create with that. So I do think that we're moving forward. And again, I appreciate you, Aaron, so much, and I appreciate being here. And those earrings are fantastic.
Thank you. No, I think this is important to talk about, because I am a why person. I am a how. I am a what. I am that person that I'm a dreamer and I'm a visionary, but I also am like, okay, how are we going to do this successfully so that everybody is safe, everybody feels heard, and everybody is given the same opportunity. So Rick, and thank you, Steph. I appreciate you too. So Rick.
Thanks again for having I think we all agree that racism exists. Nobody came on here and tried to say it doesn't exist. It's absolutely out there. But I think the pendulum swings both ways. I mean, I think there's plenty of people of color that run around, spewing racism, and vice versa. One thing I said a couple weeks ago when we talked was that, the city of Flint, in my opinion, is very unique, very diverse, and brilliant. And one of the things I used to always talk about, and I know Ben said he used to live in Flint, so he'll remember, Angelo's Coney Island was a place that everybody liked to go in Flint. And
Franklin and Davidson.
you could go into Angelo's Coney Island any time of day, and you might have Joe the Bum in one booth and a state senator in another booth. And that's the kind of diversity I'm talking about. Cultural diversity, economic diversity, racial diversity. I mean, it was there in the city of Flint my whole life and my whole career. And I think that presents, it makes it very unique. And I think the people in Flint are different. And you've seen that the protest that came to Flint ended completely different than some of these other protests. I mean, and that's a testament to, what I'm talking about. So, maybe my view isn't as skewed as some other views. If you had a law enforcement officer from some all-white community in Texas, you might have a completely different rant on here than what you're going to get from me,
Right.
But I mean, I'm not saying there's no racism, but what I am saying is, some of the stuff that goes on in some of these cases that make the headlines aren't as crazy as it seems. And one thing seems to be a common thread for all of them is that, if you obey the police, bad things don't generally happen. And a lot of these things start with somebody just not following a direction or not obeying the police. And I'm not directing that at you, Steph. So don't think
I'm sorry I talk with my face so much.
but I'm just saying that, a lot of these things just aren't necessarily, I mean, I don't know what happened in the George Floyd case. And I already told you, I thought that was completely wrong. That guy was already handcuffed. Part of the other problem we get with some of these headline cases is that we only see part of the video. We don't see everything that happened, and so we don't know what led up to the part that looks bad.
Which is true. And
so that's why a lot of times when these things happen, people always want to ask me, well, what's your take on that? Well, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I don't know all the facts, so I'm not going to judge a guy based on something that looked bad, but I don't know what led to that.
Mm-hmm.
Something else that led to it. He could have been completely justified. And that's kind of what I was getting at in some of these cases that Ben asked me about. There was a lot more going into those. Was the lady armed that got shot? No, she wasn't armed. But, it's unfortunate when bad things happen, but it's not like the police were completely in the wrong when they did all this stuff. Bad things happen sometimes. Mistakes are made. And unfortunately, in this case, that young lady lost her life. With the other young man, it was just like I just talked about. All he had to do was talk to the police for a minute, and he probably would have been back walking home. So we need to look at the whole picture, not just the small portions of it.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. I will say too, in regards to, there were a lot of protests that ended peacefully. But again, to Derrick's point, we do get a little manipulated within the media and the press. I mean, they give us what they want us to react emotionally to, right? Because this is a part of a manipulation that I do agree, I do believe is a real thing, and that's just marketing. I mean, anybody that knows anything about marketing knows that when you get people attached emotionally, they will respond a certain way. And so, thank you, Rick, for that. And I will say and I'm glad you said generally speaking, because we do know that some people follow every direct. I've been in a situation where I have followed everything and I still get a certain type of response from an officer, okay, where I question, am I getting out of this? I'm not disrespectful. I'm not doing all that. They tell me to reach for stuff. I reach for it. And there's still a certain aggression that's met to me. And I'm, just kind of sitting there. So I do know that there are some times where people do everything and it still ends up bad. So that's the conversation that we need to talk about, and those are the things that we need to look into. But so thank you, Rick, for that. And Derrick.
Thank you, Stephanie, because you're trying to get involved and you're trying to make things happen. But I do think you are misguided in the way that you are getting involved. If you really want to get involved, I would recommend that you research what President Trump has been doing for the Black community since he have taken office. You can research the whole thing. If you don't know those things, you are more than welcome to contact me, and I will put those things out there for you. So I would love for you and all the other white liberals that are out there saying they are helping our cause. I would love for y'all to say, well, take a look at what President Trump is doing for your community, the prison reforms, the opportunity zones, the funding of your Black colleges. A lot that President Trump has been over backwards trying to do for the Black community that the Black community don't know about. And I spoke to judges and attorneys about it, and they didn't know about it either. So if you need some information, reach out to me. I give it to you. If you was to go into those areas and talk to the black people, say, okay, you got a choice. So you got Joe Biden that's running for president. You got Trump that's president, already doing tangible things. He's not in the street painting Black Lives Matter on the street, but he's doing tangible things for the black community. And this is what he's doing. If you could get them to see that, that would be the best way to help my community by saying, this man is, get behind him. This is what he's doing for your community. And it's a lot that he's doing out there. Joe Biden is the author of the crime bill. You may not have been born at that time. I'm old as hell, so I know about this. He wrote the crime bill. I voted for Clinton, and I supported Joe Biden and Clinton, but he wrote that crime bill, and Clinton enacted the crime bill that put away so many black men for selling drugs. The same drug dealers that are being let out of jail now as our black kids have been held in jail for selling nickel bags and dime bags of weed. But when the illegal community came here and they started doing it, they don't arrest them for it. Now the state is selling drugs, and they have given black people all types of drugs. This all goes back to Joe Biden. So Biden cannot help my community. Democrats have had 60 years to help my community. This is not a commercial for President Trump. I look at what he's doing. I won't give a damn if Trump Royal Klan had in the White House. If he got good policies for my community, I'm going to accept those policies. I'm going to run with it. So that is what President Trump is doing. So I encourage all of you to look at what Trump is doing for the black community, and let the ones that don't know what he's doing, because the mainstream media won't let them know. Let them know that there are things out there that President Trump is doing great for your community that the other party don't want you to know that's going on. President Trump is not a Republican. President Trump is not a Democrat. He's an independent person in that he went in the White House and kicked everything over in the White House, and he's redoing it. He's showing us all the corruption, the same thing that the FBI have done to black men for years, by subjugating things, putting false evidence, and locking us up. They tried that same thing on President Trump to try to take him down. Look at Derrick, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Derrick, what I might do is have you on one day, and you can be on here by yourself and just kind of talk about your viewpoint on that. Because I find that very interesting, because let's just be honest, a lot of times we're told that black people that support Trump are paid, or, you know, actors. So I would like to talk to you one time about your viewpoint on this. And there's some things I agree with. I do agree that some things so I'm not a political person. So
from that, I work for the Federal Opportunity Zone. I am Dr. Ben Carlson's cousin. I work for the Federal Opportunity Zone that's doing great for our community, but we not taking advantage of it because we don't know about it. You know who's taking advantage of it? My buddy Scalamucci. Anthony Scalamucci is a great friend of mine. He taking advantage of it, building resorts, but it's not uplifting my community, because when I give it to the black community, they say I don't want.
And when you say your community, you mean the black community. When you say your community, you mean the black community, because you said you live within the Jewish community, so you don't live in
the black community. Is not taking advantage of it.
Okay. So yes, Derrick, I really would, and I genuinely mean that. I would love to have you back on to talk about that a little bit more, because I am very curious about that. And you are running for New York State governor. I would throw that plug out, and people can look at your website. You want to tell your website real quick?
My website is Gibson, Gibson, FORNYS governor.com. Donate $10 today. Help me meet my monthly goals.
Okay. And people, if they are interested, are encouraged to go check it out. But yes, I will reach out to you, Derrick, and have you back on so we can talk about this a little bit more. So I appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for all your input. I love transparency. I love real talk. I don't like the whole... I like to just get right to it. So I appreciate you guys for being brave enough to view your point, although it may be different from each other, it's still needed. So because we are the individuals that will be sitting and making these laws, right, or making these decisions, are people from all different vantage points. So we have to learn how to speak to each other, have a conversation to make things actually happen, because nothing is one-sided. So thank you so much. I wish you guys a great evening. And again, I appreciate you guys so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye. Well, again, thank you so much for being here with us at the Breaking Bread Village. This was a really good conversation. I love it. I know sometimes people get very passionate. I'm a very passionate person that sometimes can be misinterpreted as aggression. But really, I just get really, really passionate about things. So this is a much needed discussion, because this will impact families. This will impact our communities, and they'll impact the social workers that'll be going out to these different situations. So we need to learn how to have this conversation and also see how we're going to transition into this. And I know we didn't get a chance to bring this up, but there are communities already implementing this. So it's already happening, and some people have said it's been very successful. I don't know what it all looks like, so I want to do a little bit more research into that. But again, thank you guys so much for coming on. It's been great, and I appreciate your support and all your comments and questions. And you guys have a great evening. Thanks. Bye.